Hello, my elegant warriors. Today is a very fun day because I have my bestie on the podcast here with me. Her name is Courtney Gray. She is a life and body coach. She is the wife of a basketball coach. She is the mother to three sons, two twins, and a son who is a phenomenal wrestler. She is the
Mhm.
CEO of Gracie Glass, which is a glass design, jewelry design company. And she has a fabulous podcast that we're playing this on as well called
Yes.
Modern Body, Modern Life. Welcome to the podcast, Courtney.
I'm so excited to be here.
I know,
Oh,
isn't it
this is so
weird?
fun.
It's weird that like we're going to chat and everyone's going to listen, but here we go.
Here we go. I feel like we should go Joe Rogan and go like for like 3 hours.
That might just happen. Although I think you have a harder stop than I do, I think.
I know
No?
I have a client after this, but I was thinking, I don't know of any other women podcasts that go that long. You probably do.
Oh, I actually don't. You're totally right.
Yeah.
It's true. Men's podcasts go on and on and on.
Yeah.
And I wonder, that would be an interesting thing to look into. How
Yeah.
many women listen to those? Because I think in general, women tend to feel like they have less time for all those shenanigans.
We don't got time for that.
No,
We don't
no,
got time.
we do not. Let's start with why don't you tell the people, the listeners, how we met? Because that sort of gets into what you do.
Okay, that's a good place to start. First of all, thank you for having me. I
Oh,
adore you.
I adore you.
And I love your podcast. So I'm like so flattered to be on. So we met through a mutual friend. She introduced us because we both were certified through the life coach school as life coaches. And we were both going to be going to a mastermind together. So our mutual friend wasn't going. And she goes, "Oh, there are two of you that would really like each other. Let's introduce you." And so we actually kind of started talking over Marco Polo. And I thought you were a weirdo at first because you were wearing your mask. I'm like, well, why is this girl wearing her mask? Because you were out in public. But anyways, I was like, this girl seemed a little weird, but I fell in love with you. We fell in love over Marco Polo.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's the craziest thing because Sarah introduced us via Marco Polo, and then we sort of like she purposely took herself out of the conversation because she wasn't going to go to the meeting. I didn't even go to the meeting, so you
Yeah.
and I didn't meet in person for I don't know a long time,
A
and
year, I
then
think, almost.
yeah, I think it was a year. But we would Marco Polo every day, and because we had both recently been certified in life coaching, and we're both you had the background of having started as an entrepreneur with your jewelry business. I had the background of not being an entrepreneur, but
Mhm.
having been a lawyer all this time, and we were both starting a coaching business. Yours more deeply entrenched in coaching than myself. But so we just had so much in common, and then we just found that we had so much in common, despite the fact that you're married with three boys. I am not
Yeah.
married, no kids, and yet we think the same. We challenge each other, and I think it's been such a gift to me to have you as a friend. Tell the listeners about what drew you to coaching.
Say that again.
What drew you to coaching? How did you find coaching? What made you like it? Tell us all the things.
Yes. So I am a jewelry artist. I've been a jewelry artist for a very long time. So I'll tell you a little bit about that because it tells you why I went into coaching. So I had this jewelry business. My kids were babies and I was a stay-home mom with them. And when I was in college, I went to UC Davis and I had taken a class in the craft center on how to fuse glass with a kiln and put the glass in there, layer it and melt it together. And I just bought a kiln for fun and started fusing glass while they napped. I'd be like, "Oh, I'm going to make plates and bowls." And it was one of those for the rest of my life. Every time we go to a wedding, I'm going to have a gift. It was just was for fun. And it very quickly turned into something that I thought, oh, I could actually make money while the kids are sleeping. In fact, I'll tell you how cool this was is the first time I really realized, because I was never an entrepreneur. My family's not entrepreneurs, but the kids would be sleeping and I started making night lights. And very quickly it turned into where, I used to go to family barbecues and Christmas and I say, "Look at this bowl I made." Never to be like, "You're great. That's just great, Courtney." But then I started making these night lights, right? And people were like, "Oh, I want a palm tree. I want a whale. I wanted this." I mean, and it started going crazy. And so I started selling these night lights, threw up a website when you didn't really do this is a long time ago, like about 20 years ago, threw up a website, didn't had any idea how to make one, but figured it out and started making money. And I remember telling my husband and crying one night when I just was making like I'd go to a barbecue and I'd sell like three. And then I started getting like 2 orders a month. My nightlights were like $22. I'd get 2 orders a month, and I remember telling my husband, I was crying I'm all, "I could make $200 a month doing this. Do you realize that?" And he'd be like, "You're amazing." I mean, he was from the very beginning, "You're amazing." And then time went on and on and on, and I made this big goal at one point, like, the first year I made my revenue was like 40,000. And again, crying like, "What is
Well,
happening?"
that's huge.
Huge.
Especially it's huge.
Being a stay-at-home mom with little kids, right? And that was never the plan. It was always this, I was gonna be at home and support and cook and do all the things. And so I remember the first year I made 40,000, and it was like New Year's, and we were having cocktails, and we're like, "What should my next goal be?" And I told him, I said, "I wanna make more than you." That was my goal. My husband was like, "Sounds amazing." He was on board for all of it. I'm married to a very
Go.
special man, yeah. And it took me about 3 years, but I eventually did.
Yeah.
And so this is where the coaching comes in. I got to this point where I was doing all the things, and sending nightlights to magazines, getting featured in different magazines, all these different things. And I was like, I think I want to hire a life coach to help me like figure out. I knew that I had some limiting beliefs. I've always been into self-help and Jack Canfield and Maya Angelou, and I love Oprah and Tony Robbins, all those things. And I thought, I think I'm going to hire a life coach to see if I have some mental blocks around money and time. And I actually joined Brooke's monthly program, her membership program. And that really helped me just realize that I could be doing things differently by thinking differently.
Yeah. And when
And
Courtney says Brooke, she's talking about Brooke Castillo. That's the person who runs and owns what used to be called the Life Coach School. I think it's now called Get Coached.
yeah.
But she has a program that's a monthly program where you get coaching from an individual coach one-on-one for 20 minutes a week, but you also get access to a whole lot of things. And
Hmm.
so that is the coaching that you found.
Hmm.
Were you using the weekly one-on-ones through
Yeah,
her?
I
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
I was. And then I hired a one-on-one coach because that was so powerful. I thought, oh, what if I hired a one-on-one? So I kept up. That's when I really started up leveling and up leveling.
Yeah. And the up leveling in your brain was leading to up leveling in the glass business.
Definitely. That's it. All started from my brain. I really started realizing I had some thoughts about money, some thoughts about overworking, and I really started figuring out what was holding me back to making more and more money.
Yeah, it's so interesting. There's a couple things that you said that I just want to follow up on. I think that you and I talk a lot all day long on Marco Polo about beliefs and how beliefs are everything. And you said that you figured it out as you were going, you were figuring it out, figured out how to start a website before anybody was doing that stuff. I mean, now today that doesn't seem like that big of a deal to many, but back then no one was doing that. Um, what do you think? Where do you think you've got that belief that you could figure things out back then, before you did life coaching?
I guess I felt like, why not? It was just I have the time. I mean, I was a busy mom, but I just thought there's no negative to believing I could do this. And I will tell you, I never thought, oh, I'm going to eventually grow a company to multiple six figures out of my garage. I'm going to have 2, 3 employees. That was never my intention. It was all kind of just baby steps. It's like, oh, well, if I can do that, what about this? I remember Gary Vaynerchuk is someone who I also love and have followed for a long time. And I remember getting his book, Jab, 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 Punch, like again, like 16, 17 years ago. And I remember thinking, okay, he's telling people to do video. This is when normal people, hashtag, not hashtag, but quote, normal people were not doing videos and posting them on Facebook. It wasn't happening yet. Dentist's office weren't doing it. Lawyers weren't doing it. People weren't doing this. And so I decided, what if I could do this? I mean, he says it could be done. What if, so I studied, I wrote down a script, memorized it for like 3 hours, probably did 3 hours of takes, and then had this video where I'm all, hi, my name's Courtney. I'm a jewelry artist, right? And this is back in the day, and a lot of people might not remember this, but this is back in the day when you would post a video and I would get like 5,000 full views within the first hour.
Yeah. Yeah. I
It was
mean, it was the
amazing.
early days where there weren't a lot of other things to look at. So people were getting
Yeah.
more views. I
Yeah.
think that one of the things that I see in that story is, first of all, I think you had belief that you could figure things out from growing up and having figured things out in school and all of those things. But also you were just creating evidence by doing things step by step by step by step. I figured out a website. Why can't I figure out how to sell more? I figured
Yeah.
out how to make night lights. Why can't I figure out how to make earrings? And so that little bit and that little bit. But then when you hired a coach, um, you realized, I think you've said that you had some beliefs that were holding you back when it came to
Yeah.
money and all of that. When did you decide that you wanted to be a coach?
Yeah, well, the process was after I started making money, really focusing most of my coaching on making money, then I started focusing on other areas. I started thinking, oh, maybe I can actually use the thought work, learning how to believe differently, think differently to help me in my parenting. One of our boys was really struggled for years. And I started really using the mindset tools to coach myself into getting out of anger when I was angry at him. And it really, changed me as a mom. It changed me in the way I showed up to parent him. And our whole family started noticing that by me getting coached and learning how to think differently, it was affecting our whole family.
Yeah.
And and so then I remember right around, I think it was 2020, I was in the hot tub with my husband and I was telling him, I go, this is changing our whole family. And he agreed. Me being coached was changing our whole family. And I said, I think that I want to get certified as a coach just to help the family more. And at the time it was an $18,000 investment. And I'm like, this is going to be an $18,000 hobby, but I want it. And he was like, well, I think you should do it, but I think that you should also make money. You would be a great coach, mine as well. And here's the limiting belief. My thought was, well, there's no way I have time for that. Absolutely no way I can run a business, jewelry business, be a stay-home mom. And it's not like I had sometimes people think when I tell this story that my kids were in after school programs and that we had a nanny or something. No, no, no. I was doing all the things with the kids. I was doing the cooking, I was doing all the things, and I was running my business.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Well, that's just a limiting belief." And yeah, I wanted to punch him in the face, but it was a limiting belief. And so what I slowly started doing is I really started backing off of the jewelry to do more and more coaching because I
Yeah.
loved it.
Yeah. Now, it's interesting you talk about how it started with the money and then it was with your family and your parenting. You have chosen, now that you're certified and having gone through the certifications, you are now a life and body coach. What made you decide to choose that area to focus on with the women that you serve?
Yeah, I think that if I'm honest with myself, I wanted to choose that right away, but I had some limiting beliefs. My story with my body and weight loss and all the things is I had twins. So we have three boys. We have twins that are almost 21 and then an 18-year-old. But so I gained 75 pounds with my twins and I'm a small person but I lost that weight pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until years later that I gained because we moved and for whatever reasons, I gained about 12 pounds. And for about 2 or 3 years, I was miserable with this 12 pounds and I would lose 5 and gain more back. And it was up, down, up, down. And it was really torturous. And I will say the reason when I became a life coach, I started coaching on everything, which is
Mhm.
fun to do, especially when you first become a coach. You figure out what you love coaching on. But I realize now looking back, I wasn't saying I want to help women lose weight. I want to help them transform like I transformed. Because what I did is I used all the coaching that I learned. I learned how to make more money. I learned how to be a better mom. I learned how to improve my marriage, stress less. And I also learned how to eat normally and end the drama in my head. We could talk
Yeah.
more about that later. And my limiting belief was it's only 12 pounds. It's not significant enough that people are going to care. People are going to go, why are you a weight loss coach? You only lost your story is you only were 12 pounds heavy. And that was a limiting belief I finally got over. And I realized, Heather, there are millions of women that would love to lose 12 pounds and they've been battling with 12, 15, 10, 20 for years.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that your coaching and your approach, one of the things that I remember when you were going through that battle, because when we met, I think you were a general life coach, and then you sort of leaned
Mhm.
towards entrepreneurs because you have that experience with, you are an entrepreneur and you started a huge business.
Mhm.
And then you went into the weight. And I think that what I see is that you have such body confidence and that's so much of what women, I think are looking for. It's losing the weight, yes, but some people could lose the weight and still not get the body confidence. And it's that way of thinking about yourself that
Mhm.
you can lose the weight. And that once you've lost the weight to have, that's why Modern Body, Modern Life as your podcast name is so appropriate, because it is like the body that you live in and the life that you live in and how the two relate to one another. What do you think is, so many women torture themselves with what did I eat? What am I going to eat? What does my body look like? What do you think? Why do you think that is? And how do you think coaching helps?
Yeah, I think a lot of women, I think the story a lot of women tell themselves is not only what you just said, but also, I really want to lose weight. And they're like, enough shenanigans already. They're like, okay, I really want to lose weight. And then, until 24 hours goes by, and all of a sudden they're like, why am I even worried about this? My partner thinks I look great. They go, it's the back, it's almost like they're redeciding over and over and over. And it's the ping pong, it's a war inside your head.
Yeah.
And it affects every area of our life for sure. I mean, we experience every area of our life from the container of our body. And I think that the reason that coaching helps is it really makes them dive into why they're eating the way they're eating. First of all, why do they want it? Why is it important to them? Even if they have a partner that says, you're beautiful, and maybe a lot of women too, they're healthy. Like the doctor's not telling them to lose weight, but
Yep.
they want it. But then there's an why, if that's what they want, are they all of a sudden ping ponging and going, oh my gosh, just have the chips and guacamole. It doesn't matter. And so, what life coaching with me does is I really teach them how to manage their minds in those moments. I tell a lot of women, I'm going to help you not eat the cookie when you don't want to eat the cookie.
Right. Right. It's to be your own authority, to know that you can trust yourself enough. And this applies if the listeners are completely good with your weight and completely fabulous. It applies with money. It applies with being yelling at your kids. It applies with going for a workout when you don't feel like it. It applies with entrepreneurship for sure. It applies with dating for sure.
For
It's
sure.
this distraction of the battle that you're having in your head, and that distraction, every time that you tell yourself that you're going to do something and then you don't do it, you lose a little bit of credibility with yourself.
Yeah.
And that's a real loss, because one of the things we talk about all the time, and I want to get your take on this, Courtney, and preparing for today, I was thinking about this. You and I talk a lot about we want to be our own authority. We both
Mhm.
have had coaches. We're both trained as coaches. We both have gone the second time that we met in person, we went to a coach's event. So we're both into the coaching, and coaches will tell you what to do. Nutritionists will tell you what to do. Books will tell you what to do. Podcasts will tell you what to do. And yet you and I know that there is no one who knows us better than we do and can choose for us better. So how do you reconcile being a coach
Mhm.
with your clients being their own authority?
It's such a great question because one thing that happens with a lot of people is they hear all these different voices and different experts, people that they love and they respect. And they're like, okay, I'm hearing all these different opinions. I kind of agree with all of them. And there's this overwhelm and confusion. And then they end up doing nothing.
Yeah.
And so, if we can get to a place where you just really learn how to trust yourself and learn how to make a decision and be curious and decide. But it goes back to, like you said earlier, it all goes back to trusting yourself. And
Yeah.
when you can trust yourself, it affects every area of your life.
Right. And believing that there is a part of you. I think the thing that I see is that with a good coach, they're able to speak to the part of you that you trust,
Mhm,
right? The part of me that wants the best for me, that knows what's best for me,
mhm,
knows I don't want to eat those gummy worms, right?
mhm. Yeah.
Knows that I don't want to be on the dumb social media when I'm
Yeah.
supposed to be sending an email to my people. And so to have a coach see your brain from the outside and recognize what part of your thought process is your authority and what
Mhm,
part of your thought process is something else, a
mhm.
story that you don't want to tell yourself, I think is really helpful for coaching. Because one of the things, in if any of the listeners are in the membership, they know that I say this to them all the time. You're the authority, not me. I
Mhm,
can't tell you how to think. I can't tell you how to feel. I can offer to you thoughts about eating or money or entrepreneurship or relationships that are available to you. But
Mhm.
ultimately, you're the one who has to choose whether that thought makes you feel a way that you want to move towards and whether that is a thought that you actually believe, which is a huge part of it. Do you, Modern Body, Modern Life, when you named the podcast that name, what was the what was the genesis behind that? What was the idea behind that?
Yeah, because I at first I really wanted weight loss to be in the title and I was grappling. Even you and I'm like, what do you think about this? What, about a week, we're like, what do you think about this? I almost wanted to call it more than just weight loss, but that was kind of taken by another coach. Not they don't have a podcast called More Than Just Weight Loss, but it felt too close to home with another coach that I enjoy and follow. And so I think what I wanted to do is tell people what they already know is that it is so much more than just weight loss. It is not just about fitting in your jeans. However, if you want to fit in your jeans, then that is worthy of your time. It's two things. And so it affects every area of our life, the way we feel about ourselves, the way we feel about how we look, the way we feel about how we feel in our body, it affects everything. And what happens with a lot of my clients is once they start working with me after a few months and they start saying, I'm starting to feel in control around food, I'm starting to trust myself, it starts expanding every area of their life. They start feeling more confident to speak up in their relationships. They start asking for raises at work. They start disciplining their kids different, just like I did
Yeah.
when I started going through this coaching. And so just like the people in your membership, they can join and they want to advocate, and then they start seeing that the work you're doing with them affects every area of their life.
Yeah.
So I wanted modern body, modern life also to me means we need to be thinking about weight loss and getting older and strength training, all these things so much differently. The whole idea of going on a diet for 20 days and drastically reducing everything you're eating, taking away bread, taking away alcohol to lose weight. And you're telling yourself, oh, I can't wait until this diet's over. And then as the diet's over, you're like, I'm not going to eat those foods again, right? You've lost 10 pounds or whatever it is. And then you start slowly eating those foods again because you're a normal person. And then you start shaming yourself that you're doing something wrong, that you're eating those foods again. It's madness. It's
Yeah.
madness. I mean, it's
It
just
is.
crazy.
It's madness. And one of the things that I think that as your coaching business grows, I think more and more women will be coming to you for maintenance. Because as
Mhm.
you know, we've talked about this on the podcast and you and I talk about this. I lost 100 pounds a long time ago. The losing of the weight wasn't nearly as hard as keeping it off, for a bunch of reasons. On most of them, it's an interesting thing. You get so much positive reinforcement, especially when you lose that
Yes.
much weight, because it's so noticeable. Oh my God. And it's like a movie. People don't recognize you.
Yes.
Men who didn't know you were alive are asking you out. I mean, it was a
Mhm.
whole thing. But then when that goes away, and now this is the new norm, that's when it gets really hard because then it's all the inner work that you work on. So I think it's really interesting. We didn't talk about this before, but I wanted to talk to you about it now. I just finished a book called Getting to Yes with Yourself, and there's a book called Getting to Yes that's like a negotiation book. And Getting to Yes with Yourself, he's talking about how before you start negotiating, you have to get your brain right, sort of. And he talks a lot about observing yourself and how important it is to
Mhm.
observe yourself. It's similar to like we both meditate, and in meditation, there's the idea of like you become a witness, that you see
Yes.
yourself. And it had me thinking about coaching because I think you're very good at this. I know sometimes when we're talking on Marco Polo, you'll go back and watch
Yeah.
yourself so that you can observe yourself. And when you're getting coached, you record it and you watch yourself. I'm not as good at that, but I do think that coaching allows you to observe yourself. Someone
Mhm.
else is looking at your brain. Someone else is looking at your actions and your thoughts and your feelings from the outside and giving you their perspective, which may be something that you've never seen when you were
Yes.
observing yourself. Um, how important do you think that has that been for you and your business and your life and where you're at?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I want to say is a good coach not only will coach you and give you ideas and suggestions and support, but they will teach you to coach yourself. I mean, that to me, if your coach is not doing that, like a lot of people say, oh, you just hold people accountable and tell them what to do. It's like, oh, no, 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 no. To me, it's I'm teaching someone how to coach themselves. And towards the end of our time together, they're coming to me, like I have them message me throughout the week if they need support, and they will come to me and they're literally coaching themselves on the call. And sometimes I'll be like, you got it. You
Yeah.
don't need me anymore.
Yeah.
So that's a brilliant thing. But I think that being able to witness your own mind and really be aware of your thoughts is everything. And so this is what I teach people is the reason we tell ourselves, okay, you know what? I really, really want to lose 15 pounds. So tomorrow, this is how I'm going to eat. I'm going to cut out snacking as an example. Like there's a lot of people, one of the biggest problems for them is they eat constantly. They never ever experience hunger. They eat constantly. And so if they say, okay, I'm gonna not snack, and then they're at work and all of a sudden they're like exhausted or someone just frustrated them or something like that happens, they go to snack. They don't even understand the reason they're snacking is not really because their body's hungry. The reason they're snacking is because they have a primitive brain, we all do, that is wanting them at every moment to feel happy and feel pleasure and avoid any kind of pain, any kind of stress. And so when I teach them that and I teach them to become aware of their primitive brain, then when they're in the office and all of a sudden they're walking towards the pretzels or whatever, they can slow down and go, oh, what's really going on? I told myself I wasn't going to snack. Now I'm wanting to snack. What is really going on? And I even teach them like a 3-step process to slow things down and just become aware of what they really need.
Yeah, it's that whole awareness. That's a big part of the reason, and you and I have talked about this, tracking your food. Um, Tracking your food is another way of observing, becoming aware, seeing it from the outside. And how important is that? And again, for the listeners, some of the listeners may not be interested in losing weight, but tracking your finances, tracking your spending, tracking your, if you're an entrepreneur, tracking your outreach, if you're a lawyer, tracking your hours, tracking your wins, whatever the case may be. Why do you think that works?
Yeah, well, and tracking your thoughts too. So when
Yeah.
clients come to work with me, it's they have a food and thought tracker is what I give them. I think the thoughts are actually the most important,
Yeah.
but we need the data. So many people. I did a podcast a few weeks ago where I talked about like what was the name of the I forget the name of the podcast, but I basically talked about half-assed tracking. When people in the morning they start tracking and they're like going throughout their day, like, yes, I'm doing so good. And so they're writing down their food or they're using a digital tracker, whatever works for them. And then all of a sudden it's 4 o'clock and they shove something in their mouth and they're like, you know what? I'm just not even going to track anymore. This is no big deal. Like they don't want to be
Yeah.
accountable
Yeah.
for what
Yeah.
they ate.
Yeah.
But that's the information we need. We need to know what happened in that moment. Were you bored? Were you stressed? What was happening? That is what we need to figure out in order for them to feel in control around food.
Yeah, and so much of it is feeling those feelings. Everything you just said,
Yes.
bored, stressed, angry. I mean, whether you are eating when you don't want to be, drinking when you don't want to be, looking at social media when you don't want to be, having sex when you don't want to be, gambling when you
Yeah.
don't want to be,
Yeah.
working when you don't want to be, any of the things that you can use to not feel your feelings.
Mhm.
It is really just feeling those feelings. It is not as if, unfortunately, a coach is going to make you feel good all the time. It's just ideally to help you to be able to deal with the feelings when they come up and feel them.
Oh, yeah. And we are in a society where we have so many distractions that it's almost like we're in this feel good, feel good, feel good at all moments. Oh, you're bored? Here, look on social media. Oh, you're stressed? Here, eat the food. And to me, of all the things, the food was so accessible. It really is what people turn to. And it's interesting a lot of times when I'm working with a client and they start feeling in control around the food, they start actually going to social media more. And they'll come
Yep.
to me and laughing. They're all, now I can't get off social media. I'm like,
Yeah.
let's work on that. And you're right. It's all just avoiding some kind of discomfort. And I'll tell you how they're one of the biggest ones that's coming up more and more and more is boredom.
Yeah.
We as a society do not want to be bored. We always want to be swiping or watching or eating or drinking or something like that. And here's what happens when you take away the food and the movies and the Netflix and the, Instagram, when you take all that away, you have to look at your life and go, do I like my partner? Do I like my, routines in the evenings? Do I like my house? Do I like my job? And then you really have to grapple with what am I going to do here
Yeah.
with my life?
No, it's so true that I'm a podcast junkie. And the other day, someone said, I don't remember who it was, but they were saying that boredom is actually just the overlay of anxiety. Like anxiety
Mm.
of, I don't like my life. I've made bad choices. I don't know what to choose. I don't know what I'm doing or any of that. And so you sort of just say, like, I'm bored. And then you try to fill the time so you don't have to deal with those underlying things. And you
Yeah.
make
Well,
a
you
good
know what,
point.
Heather? You know what I think is? I feel like boredom is the gateway, gateway emotion.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times what happens, because I used to overeat when I was bored. I was trying to work less. I was trying to enjoy my evenings and I would stop working and I would be bored. And then I'd be like, I'm going to make a batch of cookies. And then, of course, my husband and kids were like, yay. And so that was great. And so when I really started saying, I'm just going to allow myself to be bored, then what started happening is then I started questioning everything. Why don't I have more hobbies?
Mm.
Why do I go to bed so early? You know, on a you and I would love to be in bed by 7:30.
Yeah.
Let's just publicly admit that. And so you start going, "Oh my God, there's something wrong with me." Now that I'm friends with you, I'm like, "Well, there's something wrong with Heather and I."
You're
But then
not
I start
alone.
going, I know. Then I started saying, "Oh my God, my husband and I don't like watching the same things on TV. Like, oh, is this not good for our marriage?" I mean, it's when you allow boredom, it is the gateway to start having anxiety about other things.
Yeah. Yeah, and to your point about food and weight and bodies, I used to say this all the time when I had the weight as such a thing, that if you drink, you can just cut alcohol out of your life. If you smoke, you can cut out cigarettes. Gambling, cut it out. Even sex addiction, you can counter it a little bit. But food and money are two things that you always have to deal with. You always
Yeah.
have to face. Every day you have to eat and you have to spend money.
Yeah.
Those are the two things. And so you have to, it is really the fastest way to gaining some authority over
Mhm.
yourself and your body and your life. And so the work that you're doing is so important, Courtney.
Well,
Before I
the
get
work
to
I'm
the,
doing applies to every area of people's lives.
that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And I think that's why you love it so much, because I think that
Yeah.
ultimately the people who are working with you now will stay with you through maintenance and then
Mhm.
stay with you through all of the other things that come.
Yes.
Tell the listeners before I get to those last three
Yeah.
questions, and I know that first of the last three we might talk about for a bit, but tell the listeners where they can find you and all the things.
Yeah. CourtneyGrayCoaching.com. And then Modern Body, Modern Life is my podcast. And then Modern Body, Modern Life on Instagram. I have Facebook too, but I love Instagram.
Yeah, I'm going to put a link to all of those things in the show notes so that everybody can find them. If you are looking for a coach, there, Courtney is obviously, I mean, she's just phenomenal. Okay, before I let you go, the first
Yeah.
question is a newer question for the podcast, and it is, what is the last thing that you advocated for?
Yes. So I was thinking, I knew you were going to ask me this, and I've been thinking a lot about it. I feel like I advocate all all damn day. But I think the biggest one for me was advocating to myself about walking away from my jewelry business. Now, I still have my website up, orders come in through the website, but I mean, this was a $250,000 a year revenue business that I really have left. And, allowing people to be horrified that I'm leaving and, even family members that I love saying, "What?" And knowing that I have had to leave that in order to grow this coaching business, really that I believe is my next chapter. And I love my coaching so much more. I think it's changing lives, and I think that it's the potential for it is so much bigger, but it was probably one of the hardest decisions I've ever made.
Love that you're talking about advocating to yourself, for
Yeah.
yourself,
Yeah.
because, if advocating is building beliefs, which is one of the ways I describe it, and it's changing minds. We
Mhm.
have to build our own beliefs and change our own minds before we can build other people's beliefs and change their
Yeah.
minds.
Yeah.
And so the more that you believe that coaching is your future and that you are meant to be a coach and that you are the best coach for the woman sitting in front of you, the more they will believe. And so you've had to build that belief and change your mind in
Mhm.
to do the things that you've done and to step away from Gracie Glass. So it's such a great example. And it's something that I have done too. And I have struggled with as well with the law, stepping away from the law, that identity, that paycheck, that security, that took a lot of persuading what I call my inner jury, but the part of me that is my authority,
Mhm.
And so I love that you answered it that way. You're the first person to have answered it that way. And I
Yeah.
think that it's the beginning of everything. Just like this book, getting to yes with yourself. He's written getting to yes, and he's written getting past no. But this now he's talking about what goes on in your brain first. So I love that. The second question is, what book would you recommend for the listeners?
So this was a tough read, but it was a very powerful book for me. It's called The Last Word on Power by Tracy Goss. It was a hard one.
I know
It's a
I know
hard
I
one,
have to read it.
guys.
I
It's a hard
know.
one. But let me tell you, it's a hard one. But I'm going to read it again and I'll tell you really quickly
What's her name?
why
What's
it
the
was
author's name? Tracy Goss?
Tracy Goss, Goss. And it wasn't like it was good. It was a good hard, but it was the reason I like this book so much is I'm going to probably butcher my summary of the book, but it talks about basically what got you to where you are is not going to get you to where you want to go. And I really do believe that concept. And it really helps you figure out what your winning strategy is. And so we all have a winning strategy. We probably have multiple winning strategies, but they really help you identify what your winning strategy is. And they say that at some point, in order to go to your next level, and I'm all about going to my next level in every area, you're going to have to give up that winning strategy.
Mm.
It works. The problem is it got you to where you are. It has been working. Right.
Right.
One of my winning strategies, because I do think I have a few, is I am a really, really hard worker and I'm a grinder and I've got grit and I'm like, go, go, go. Well, you can't go, go, go like that to $1 million.
Yeah.
At some point, it's not going to work. And so it's a really great book.
Yeah. I mean, you've talked about it a number of times. I've heard some other people talk about it, but I've started it and stopped it, but I need to get it together. I need to get it together. All right, Courtney, I'm actually interested in what your answer to this next question will be.
Yeah.
It's my favorite question. Your answer to this question will go on to the Elegant Warrior Spotify playlist. What is your theme song?
Okay, my theme song is a song probably no one has ever heard of. So I don't know if you know this. I love music. I love all types of music. And at first I was like, oh, I spent way too much time thinking about this. I love Enya. Do you know this about me that I love Enya?
No, I did not
Well,
know
that's
that
not it
about
though.
you.
That's not the one. But I
Oh,
love Enya. I've been listening to Enya since I was like probably a teenager. And I just love it. It makes me breathe in different. I just love it. But I heard a song a few years ago, and I don't know if you get this way, and this might sound a little woo to your listeners, but sometimes every once in a while I will hear a song and I literally go, like it makes me breathe differently, and it makes
yeah.
me think if I like was able to play like a 20-minute movie of my life, that's the song. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about here.
Yeah.
And so it's a song called a piano, and it's called River Flows in You. And I'm going to spell the guy's last name because I don't think I can pronounce it. Yiruma. And
Oh
this
my-
was hilarious. I'll tell you this. So this morning I was trying to remember this song. I don't even listen to it very often because I don't want it to lose its magic.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to find it on my phone, and all of a sudden I played it and I was like, oh, there it is. And Ryan, my son, was walking by and he goes, it's your song. And I go, what are you
Oh,
talking? It was so cute. I go, what are you talking about? He goes, well, that's a song. You play it every once in a while. It must be your favorite. And I'm like, oh my God, it is.
what a
I,
doll.
he is a
Wait, I
doll.
just have to, we're going to add on a little something here
Yeah, yeah.
because when we talk about the coaching and everything and your points about self-coaching are so good. Your son, Ryan, that you just described, he just went to states for wrestling and got fifth in the state.
Yeah.
And some of the things that he tells you about wrestling, will you real quick? I did not prep you for this, but I
Yeah.
love the you pin you in thing. So will
Yeah.
you talk about how he was thinking when he was losing that one match?
Yeah, so this was probably last year too. He had told me after he lost a match, and I don't say a lot to my kids after I let them take their time, and I'm still learning about wrestling, but I just sit down and I say, what are we doing? Give it to me. Like, what are we thinking? How are you doing? And he said, I was not wrestling to win. I was wrestling to not lose. In my mind, like you probably could have exploded.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
what is happening? Right. And I literally was like, what? And I didn't want to, what do you mean? What do you mean? But I went to his coach later that day and I said, Ryan said this to me. The reason he lost is he was winning to not lose. He wasn't wrestling to win. What the hell does that even mean? And he explained it. And I'm still learning what this means, but it is a very slight shift. Again, back to awareness. It's a very slight shift in what your thoughts and energy are in that moment. Are you being a defensive type player, wrestler, or are you on the offense? And I think it all starts with your beliefs in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you told me that is absolutely, and it's a huge thing for me as a trial attorney. When I started, I was always up wrestling. I was always trying cases to win. And then with more success, the pressure was, I just can't lose. I just can't lose. And,
Mm.
I don't know how much it changed in the courtroom if someone was watching me, if they could see a difference, but it changed the way I felt about it. And it's so much more fun to play to win. And then the
Yeah.
other piece is there was some conversation that you had about him saying that was losing, he's playing someone better than him. He was losing and trying to keep the belief that if he
Yes.
could just pin him, tell me that part.
Yes, that's right. Okay, both stories are good, but that's the one I think you originally meant. So this last time at state afterwards, he said it's so hard because at the wrestling, at the very end, if you're down by 3 points or whatever, or any points, nah, 3 points, and there's 30 seconds left. Really, it gets to a point where the only way to win is to pin. The only way. And the cool thing is the one thing I love about wrestling as opposed to other sports is it doesn't matter. You could be down by 11 and you pin and you win.
That
It's
I
so
love that
it's
line.
amazing.
That's
Yeah,
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 I
yeah, yeah.
love that. I
Yeah, and
love
so
that.
that's so cool, but it's also he was talking about how it's really hard when you're down by 4 and it looks, points-wise, really there's no way you can probably win unless you pin, and to hold the belief in that moment, I could still pin, and he even said it was interesting, he goes, "And the guy you're wrestling or girl you're wrestling, that they know they've got it."
Yeah.
But you're trying to still believe that you have a chance, even though there's a part of you that's like, I don't know that I can. And then you're exhausted physically. Oh, I mean, it's a very mental sport. It's quite an amazing sport.
Well, and I'm so sure that your coaching and just talking about that stuff with your boys and with your husband when the boys are around has changed the way that they approach. And I know it has from talking to your sons, changed the way that they approach their jobs and the wrestling and all of that. But I love the idea from wrestling that even if you're way behind,
Mhm.
if you can pin, you can win. And staying in that belief is the only way that's going to happen. All right.
Yeah.
I've been talking I could talk to you all day. We will talk all day. But the listeners are probably like, okay, ladies, wrap it up. I love you so much. I
I
will
love you
talk
so
to you
much.
soon. We will
Yes.
put links to you, the song, the book, and your podcast in the show notes. Courtney, thank you so much for coming on.
I love you. It was so fun.